The Council of Kiral met in silence, as they often did when considering matters of threat and survival. Their chambers were built from black stone that absorbed all light, making the room feel less like a place of governance and more like the inside of a predator's maw. Around the circular table sat 12 figures, each cloaked in the flowing silver of authority. Their compound eyes glittered as one of them spoke, his voice cool, deliberate, and sharp as glass. "Humans," he hissed. "They rise again." The others shifted uneasily. Humanity had survived plague, famine, and wars that should have reduced them to ash. Their colony on Vera 9 had been nothing more than an experiment, a place to see if these stubborn creatures could thrive in unfamiliar soil. Not only had they survived, but under the leadership of one man, Elias Carter, they had flourished. "They are dangerous," another counselor muttered. "Not because of their weapons. Those are primitive compared to ours. Not because of their numbers. Those are still few. But because they refuse to die properly. When beaten, they rise stronger. When broken, they mend into something harder to shatter." The Council of Kiral had spent centuries perfecting their control over other species, fear, manipulation, coercion. These tools had always been enough. Yet humans resisted in ways the Council did not fully understand. They mourned their losses, but still laughed. They carried scars, but turned them into stories. They suffered betrayal, but somehow found the strength to trust again. It was this last trait the Council found most maddening. Trust, love, connection. The Kiral considered emotions as nothing more than weaknesses to be exploited. For them, relationships were tools, bonds of utility, alliances born only to achieve goals. The idea that love could inspire strength was alien to them. If humanity truly drew power from this, then it must be tested. Thus, a plan was formed. "Send one of ours," said the eldest counselor, "a face they will not suspect, a figure designed to lure him into weakness, and when he gives his heart, we shall crush it. Then we shall see if the human spirit can truly recover." The one chosen for this mission was Erin, a young Kiral woman whose beauty was considered remarkable even among her own people. Tall, lithe, with eyes of liquid silver that reflected more than they revealed, she had long been trained as an operative in subtle arts. She knew how to smile convincingly, how to speak in ways that made others lean closer, how to give just enough of herself to make others lower their guard. Her orders were given plainly: infiltrate the human colony, integrate herself into the life of Elias Carter, gain his trust, and then betray him in a way so devastating that his will, and by extension, the will of his people, would collapse. The reports on Elias were extensive. He had fought in 2 planetary wars and survived. He had scars running down his left arm, a testament to shrapnel that should have crippled him. He had lost his brother in combat, his fiancée to plague, and still he endured. When others faltered, he stepped forward, rebuilding not just structures, but communities. He was farmer, soldier, leader, and friend. To the Council, he was a threat. To Erin, he was an assignment. When she boarded the transport bound for Vera 9, her disguise was flawless. She appeared as a weary refugee, her story rehearsed. A family lost to raids, a home destroyed, nowhere left to go. Her shoulders hunched, her clothing worn, her voice soft with practiced grief. Humans were predictable in their kindness, she believed. Elias Carter would take her in. That was the first step. And indeed, when she arrived at the colony gates, it was Elias himself who found her. He was broader than she had imagined, sun-browned from labor in the fields, his hair disheveled from work. There was nothing regal about him, nothing commanding in the way the Council's records had described. He looked ordinary, but his eyes, there was something in his eyes that unsettled her. They were warm, steady, and piercing all at once. When she told her story, his expression softened, and without hesitation, he offered her food, shelter, and safety. "Welcome," he said simply. "No one should be alone here." Erin bowed her head, concealing the faint twist in her chest. This was exactly what she had been trained for: exploit his compassion, draw him closer, and one day tear him apart. Yet as she followed him into the settlement, her mind whispered an unsettling thought she quickly silenced. For the first time in her career of manipulation, she felt the faintest sting of guilt. This, she told herself firmly, was just the beginning. He was human. His heart would be easy to break. And yet, as Elias handed her a cup of water with a smile that held no calculation, only kindness, Erin wondered if perhaps she had underestimated her prey. Elias Carter was supposed to be predictable. That's what the Council of Kiral had drilled into Erin before she departed. Humans crave attachment. They are slaves to their need for connection. If you give them what they seek, you will have them in your grasp. The strategy had seemed straightforward. Smile at him, lean on him, feign weakness, then tug at the heartstrings until his guard lowered completely. That was how one dismantled a human spirit. But the Elias Carter she met on Vera 9 didn't match the Council's sterile files. He wasn't a brooding soldier turned rigid leader. He wasn't cold or calculating. He was, disarmingly, ordinary. In the mornings, he rose before dawn to tend the fields. The soil on Vera 9 was rocky, stubborn, and unforgiving, yet he coaxed crops from it with patience and persistence. Sometimes he would hum while working, low and tuneless but oddly comforting. When Erin asked what he was singing, he laughed sheepishly. "Nothing. Just a habit, I guess. Makes the work lighter." At meals, he insisted she eat first. "You've been through enough," he would say, even though his own plate was often modest. He had little, yet he gave as if he had much. It unsettled her. So Erin began her tests. She had to. Every interaction was meant to be data, evidence to report back to the Council. Her first tactic was to play at frailty. She pretended to tire easily, dragging her steps when they walked to the irrigation channels. Elias only encouraged her, slowing his pace without complaint. "You'll get stronger," he said with quiet confidence. "This place has a way of toughening people up. You'll see. No hint of irritation, no visible weakness, just patience." Her second attempt was jealousy. Over dinner one evening, she mentioned how another man in the colony, a mechanic named Jareth, had offered her extra rations and smiled at her. She expected Elias to stiffen, to reveal the fragile threads of pride or possessiveness she could tug upon. Instead, he only chuckled. "Jareth's a good man. You'd be safe with him." He raised his glass in a light-hearted toast. "To good neighbors." The answer infuriated her. No jealousy, no insecurity, just acceptance. Her third attempt was sharper, designed to provoke suspicion. She asked Elias why he trusted strangers so easily, reminding him that danger often came in soft voices and gentle smiles. Surely he must know that letting her into his home was a risk. He didn't grow defensive. He didn't retreat behind walls of suspicion. Instead, he leaned back on the porch under the pale twin moons and gave her the same steady look he always did. "Maybe it does make me vulnerable," he admitted. "But if you shut everyone out, you lose more than you protect. I'd rather risk my heart than live without connection." The words rattled her. Her species, the Kiral, considered. Emotions liabilities. Attachments were shackles. To them, trust was a leash, and love was a poison. But Elias spoke as if those very things were his strength, as if they were what allowed him, and by extension his people, to endure. And Erin didn't know how to counter that. That night, when she reported back to the Council, her fingers hovered over the communicator. She couldn't bring herself to describe him honestly. Instead, she wrote, Target cautious, trust not yet secured, progress slow. It was a lie. Elias trusted too easily, too deeply. But the thought of betraying him, of handing the council the keys to his heart, pressed heavy on her chest. Days turned into weeks. Elias never demanded anything of her. He asked questions, small ones, gentle ones, but when her answers came out vague, he didn't press. He taught her how to mend torn shoes, how to coax seedlings into growth, how to patch the leaks in the colony's water system. Each lesson was given freely, without calculation. Sometimes, when he laughed, Erin caught herself smiling in return. She hated that. She was supposed to be an infiltrator, not a participant. Yet the lines blurred each day she remained at his side. One evening, she sat across from him at the dinner table, staring at the scar that cut across his forearm, the one the reports had mentioned. She asked how he had gotten it. He paused, then shrugged lightly. War. It doesn't matter, but his eyes softened as he added, "What matters is that it healed. Scars are proof that you kept going." The statement lodged in her chest like a shard of glass. Among her people, scars were seen as failures, reminders of weakness. For Elias, they were the opposite. They were proof of survival. The more time she spent with him, the less certain she became. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. He wasn't supposed to be kind without reason. He wasn't supposed to teach her things that felt good to learn. He wasn't supposed to make her question everything she had been trained to believe, and most dangerous of all, she wasn't supposed to care. But as she sat there, watching him laugh with another colonist, something inside her shifted against all orders, all instincts, all training. Erin realized she didn't want to hurt Elias Carter. The weeks bled into one another, marked by the rhythm of life on Vera 9, days of toil under a stubborn sun, evenings of shared meals, stories, and the kind of laughter Erin had once thought impossible among a people who had endured so much loss. She had come expecting fragility, but what she found was resilience woven into every corner of human existence, and Elias Carter stood at the heart of it. Each day revealed a new facet of him. He was more than the stoic leader in the council's reports. He was a man who carried others' burdens without complaint, who bore his own grief quietly, but never let it harden into cruelty. Erin began to watch the way others looked at him, the respect in their eyes, the gratitude, the trust. It wasn't fear that bound these humans to him, but genuine devotion. For the Kiral, such loyalty was manufactured, purchased through manipulation, enforced by leverage. Yet here, among humans, it seemed to grow naturally, like a wild vine, rooting itself deep and unbreakable. Erin should have felt disgust. Instead, she felt something far more dangerous. Admiration. She told herself it was simply curiosity, a professional interest in her target. But the lies she fed herself grew harder to swallow each day, especially when she began avoiding her communicator. The council demanded regular updates, and in the beginning she had delivered them dutifully. But as the weeks passed, her reports became vague, clipped, and misleading. She wrote of Elias as distant, cautious, unwilling to let her close. The truth was the opposite. He had welcomed her as if she had always belonged. She could see it in the way he left small gifts for her, a sharpened tool for her chores, a repaired clasp on her cloak, a steaming cup of tea left waiting after long days. None of it was grand. All of it was genuine. And that was what unsettled her most. Her people taught that kindness was bait, always tied to some hidden hook. But Elias never reeled her in. He simply gave. And in doing so, he unraveled the careful walls she had built. The fracture widened the day Elias showed her the memorial grounds. The colony had built them on a rise overlooking the settlement. rows of simple markers carved with names, faces, and symbols of lives cut short. Erin followed him among them, her silver eyes scanning the etched stone. He stopped at 2 graves near the center. "My brother," he said quietly, resting a hand on one marker. "And," his voice faltered. He laid his palm on the second stone. "The woman I was going to marry." Erin didn't know what to say. Loss, in her culture, was hidden. The Kyril buried pain deep, refusing to let others see weakness. But Elias stood there openly, acknowledging the cracks in his heart. "They gave everything," he continued softly. "The least I can do is live in a way that honors them." Erin felt something inside her chest twist painfully. She wanted to tell him that such openness was dangerous, that exposing wounds only invited predators. Yet she could see with her own eyes that it was the opposite. His grief had not broken him. It had deepened him, made him someone others could lean on. And she wanted to lean on him too. That night, when her communicator pulsed with an incoming order, her hands trembled as she read the message. "It is time. The human has trusted enough. Reveal yourself. Betray him, break him, let him fall, and the others will follow." She sat frozen, the words searing into her mind. This was the moment she had been trained for, the culmination of her assignment. All she had to do was obey. But the thought of looking into Elias's steady, kind eyes and shattering what he had offered her, trust, belonging, warmth, made her chest ache in a way she had never experienced. The next day, Elias noticed her silence. They were repairing an irrigation valve when he set down his tools and studied her carefully. "You seem troubled," he said, his voice gentle but firm. "You don't have to carry it alone. Whatever it is, I'll listen." For a heartbeat, she nearly told him everything: the mission, the lies, the counsel. The words trembled on her tongue, but fear stopped her. If she confessed, she would lose the only place she had ever felt seen. So she swallowed the truth. Her voice came out strained, brittle. "It's nothing." Elias didn't press. He only gave her a small nod. "When you're ready," he said simply. "I'll be here." It began with a crash, an old shuttle spiraling out of the sky, its engines howling like a dying beast. The colony sirens wailed as the vessel tore into the ground just beyond the settlement's walls, sending a plume of smoke into the evening air. People rushed toward the wreckage, some carrying tools, others buckets of sand and water, all moving with a desperate need to help. Erin followed, her mind torn between instinct and hesitation. She had never faced chaos like this outside of training, simulations. The Kyril did not run into danger for strangers, but the humans did, and Elias was at the front of them all. The shuttle was a mangled ruin, its hull split open and leaking fumes. Sparks spat from a fractured power core. The smell of scorched metal and burning fuel clung to the air. Erin froze at the sight, calculating risk, weighing survival, exactly as she had been trained to do. But Elias didn't pause. He darted into the smoke, his shirt pulled over his mouth, his movements sharp with urgency. Erin's breath caught as she saw him pull free a trapped colonist, slinging the half-conscious man over his shoulder and carrying him out. He set him down safely, then turned back without hesitation. "Stay here," he shouted at her as he passed. But she didn't. Against every Kyril instinct, Erin ran after him. Inside the shuttle, the heat was suffocating. Flames licked along the walls, and the shriek of straining metal filled her ears. A fuel line ruptured, spraying liquid fire across the floor. For a moment, panic seized her. She stumbled, frozen, her body refusing to move as the flames surged closer. Then Elias was there, his arm grabbing hers, pulling her out of harm's way. She felt the blistering heat against her skin as he shielded her with his own body, taking the burns himself. Together they stumbled out into the open air, coughing and gasping. Later, as they sat near the medical station, Aaron tended to his burns with trembling hands. She had stolen medicine from the colony's stores, a decision she justified to herself as efficiency, but now she applied it carefully, almost reverently, to his reddened skin. "Why?" she whispered, unable to stop the question from spilling out. Her silver eyes glistened in the firelight. "Why would you risk yourself? For me?" Elias winced as she dabbed ointment across his arm, but his expression remained steady. "Because you matter," he said, as if it were the simplest truth in the world. The words shattered her. Her people had sent her here to prove that humans could be undone by love, that affection was weakness. Yet Elias, wounded and weary, embodied the opposite. To him, caring was strength. And worse, he extended that strength to her, even though she was a stranger. Even though, if he knew the truth, she was his enemy. Erin's hands shook. Her chest ached. She couldn't carry the lie any longer. That night, when the colony grew quiet, she sat across from Elias in his small home. The lamplight flickered. Across his face, casting shadows that made him look older, more scarred, but no less kind. "I need to tell you something," she began, her voice trembling. He set down his tools, giving her his full attention. "Go on." She drew a long breath, then let the words pour out. The mission, the council, the lies about her family and her past, the truth of who she was and why she had been sent. Every word felt like tearing flesh from bone, but she forced it out, unable to keep the weight inside any longer. When she finished, silence fell. She braced herself for the explosion. Anger, disgust, betrayal. She expected him to recoil, to cast her out, to denounce her as the deceiver she was. But Elias didn't. He sat in stillness, his gaze searching hers, and then, to her astonishment, he reached for her hand. "Then you've already proven them wrong," he said softly. Her voice cracked. "What do you mean?" "If you were supposed to break me," Elias said, his thumb brushing against her trembling fingers, "why are you the one crying?" Erin's chest collapsed inward. The tears came, unbidden and unstoppable, streaking down her face. She covered her mouth with her free hand, but the sobs broke through anyway. All her life, failure had meant punishment. Deviation from orders meant disgrace. Yet here was Elias, betrayed, lied to, manipulated. And instead of condemning her, he chose compassion. Erin wept into his hands, her forehead pressing against his knuckles. He didn't pull away. He simply held her, steady as stone, until the storm inside her calmed. Erin knew this truth the moment she confessed her mission to Elias. She had defied them, turned against her orders, and worse, she had allowed herself to feel what no Kyril operative was ever meant to feel. Compassion, love. To the Council, such disobedience was not a flaw. It was treason. The retaliation came swiftly. At dawn, the colony's early workers spotted shadows descending from the sky, sleek Kyril skimmers glinting like blades in the sunlight. Alarm bells rang across Vera 9. Farmers dropped tools, mechanics, scrambled for cover. The Council's enforcers had arrived to reclaim their agent and erase the human leader she had been meant to destroy. Elias and Erin stood together at the colony's edge as the ships landed. Dust swirled, engines roared, and a squad of armored figures emerged. Their armor shimmered silver, their visors reflecting the crowd of terrified colonists. At the center stood a tall figure whose voice boomed through a translator. Erin of the Kyril. "You will return with us. The Council commands it." Erin's pulse thundered in her ears. She could see the unspoken threat in their formation. If she resisted, the humans would be slaughtered as an example. She stepped forward, her voice steady despite the fear clawing at her. "No." The lead enforcer's visor tilted. "You have been compromised. You belong to the council. These creatures are beneath you." Elias moved to her side before she could answer, his presence solid and unyielding. "She belongs to no one," he said firmly. The enforcers advanced. The colonists, though afraid, rallied behind Elias. Farmers gripped makeshift tools like weapons. Mechanics readied welding torches and scrap metal shields. They were outmatched in every way, less trained, less armed, but they stood their ground. Not because they believed they could win, but because Elias Carter did not back down, and neither would they. The standoff stretched, tension crackling like static. One of the enforcers lunged. Chaos erupted. Energy blasts scorched the air. Colonists ducked and scattered. Yet to Aaron's shock, they did not flee entirely. They fought, improvised. Weapons clashed with advanced armor. Farmers threw rocks and scrap metal. Mechanics used their tools as makeshift shock weapons, and Elias, at the forefront, fought with nothing but grit and resolve. Erin's instincts screamed at her to run. But when she saw Elias staggering under, a blow her fear burned away. She leapt into the fray, moving with the grace and training her people had drilled into her since childhood. For the first time, she used it not for the council's cause, but for humanity's. She struck fast, disabling one enforcer's weapon with a precise kick. Another swung at her, but she ducked and slammed her fist into the joint of their armor. Her movements were efficient, merciless, yet her heart pounded with a strange clarity. She wasn't destroying for orders anymore. She was fighting for choice. For Elias. The battle dragged, but humans had a way of enduring what should have broken them. Their stubbornness, their refusal to surrender, tilted the fight. The enforcers faltered under sheer numbers, surprised by the colonists' resilience. Finally, when the leader realized victory was slipping, he barked a retreat order. The skimmers lifted, carrying the wounded and defeated back into the sky. The council had lost. The colony erupted in weary cheers, though many bore burns and bruises. Erin stood among them, breathing hard, her silver eyes fixed on Elias. He was battered, his lips split, his arms scorched from the earlier crash, yet he smiled at her through the pain. "You stayed," he said simply. She couldn't speak. She only nodded, her throat tight, her chest aching with a mixture of relief and something deeper. When the adrenaline ebbed and the fires were put out, Erin found herself beside Elias on the colony wall, watching the horizon where the skimmers had vanished. The humans would rebuild, they always did. But the danger was not gone. The council would not give up so easily. Still, for the first time in her life, Erin felt no fear of what lay ahead. She turned to Elias, her voice low but steady. "I was sent here to break your heart." He gave her a small, knowing smile. And instead, she reached for his hand, her fingers threading with his. "Instead, you mended mine." Silence lingered between them, warm and heavy. The colony bustled behind them, alive with resilience. The council had tried to prove that love was humanity's weakness. Instead, they had discovered its strength. Erin knew she could never return to the world that had shaped her into a weapon. She didn't want to. Her place was here now, beside the man who had shown her that compassion could be sharper than cruelty, that trust could be stronger than fear, and that love could turn even enemies into allies. The council had failed.